I was blown away because when you did the neural check and then you gave me an intro to BrainTap visualization meditation practice. After that, I had to give a presentation to about 100, 150 folks who were getting trained to become our next generation of facilitators at Google. And I felt I did so well. I was very confident. I was very present. I was very equanimous with the situation. So something happened, like, where the technology that you created helped me actually come to that state of mind.
One of the things that we teach in the book that I think is fascinating is giving people a way to look at their life differently, like the circle of vitality.
Creating this circle of vitality and including that as a framework for our brain health. And there are 8 that we have identified in the book. The first one is physical, then we have emotional, mental, social relationship, environmental, occupational, spiritual, and overall well-being.
It used to be that we would work, we'd go take a coffee break, and maybe have a coffee, a donut or whatever, and then it would recharge us, we'd go back to work. But we're finding now that it's more of a brain space than it is a body space. Our brains were not designed for this lifestyle we're living.
Welcome to the Brain Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Porter. Please join us on our mission to better a billion brains. Enjoy the episode and remember to share it with your family and friends.
Hey, BrainTap Nation, we're now bringing you another episode of the Brain Fitness Podcast, and today we have a very special guest, my co-author of the book, The Brain Fitness Blueprint, which launches on October 21st. So if you're listening to this afterwards, then you can always go to any of the internet sites and you can check out that book, or go to brainfitnessblueprint.com, and we're going to have a place there where you can learn about the book. But we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the mind of Ruchika Sikri, who I met at Google. We went out there to kind of present what we have as far as a stress reduction strategy and what we call brain breaks instead of coffee breaks. And so we had a little experience. We talk about it in the book a little bit, but we went there. We put Ruchika on the neuro check. We tested her out. We did the session. Then we showed afterwards what was happening. And of course, at that time, Ruchika was more into non-technological means of doing these things, so she had to kind of take a step back. But then we formed a friendship, we developed this book together, and we got a lot of big things to do in the world. So Ruchika, thank you for being a guest on the Brain Fitness Podcast today.
Patrick, it's a delight. I'm so glad we're able to finally do it. It's been a journey and a great one to be with you on exploring our book project and this space overall. Yeah. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, a lot of people listening probably don't understand like your role at Google. I mean, they think of these big corporations, and I think you've done it at other corporations as well. But one of the things that we know is if you have happy workers, you have more productive workers. So there's actually a monetary side to what they're doing, but it's also good for the employees. So tell us a little bit about your work leading up to writing the book, Brain Fitness Blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at Google for about 15 years, and of that, about a decade I spent on cultivating well-being, mindfulness, and compassion programs as a volunteer, and then in a full-time role as the head of Wellbeing learning. And it was such a wonderful journey. Honestly, when I was appointed in the formal role, I did not realize that this will be a long-term role. I thought it was like a 3 months to a 6-month project, which were often given to Google employees to solve for some problem. That 1 year when I got the job was like when our health and well-being of employees were not showing some good indicators. We do a survey once a year. This is like 2012, 2013, when the company had actually grown threefold, and people were just having a hard time grasping with the ever-changing organization structure, new products, new focus areas being launched. And we all are humans at the end of the day, and it does create a lot of level of stress for us. So that was reflected in how the organization was performing on the health and well-being of our employees. And Google set out a committee, and I was, and me and my manager at that time, Bill Duane, we set out to actually create Wellbeing learning at Google. And lo and behold, we trained employees on our marquee program called Search Inside Yourself, which was mindfulness-based, neuroscience-backed emotional intelligence program. And by the end of my term at Google doing that job, 25 to 28,000 employees had taken that training all around the world. We had trained 500 volunteers to either lead meditations in local offices or teach this program, and also come up with some creative ways to bring well-being in their local offices. And so we were able to expand all of these programs to 170 countries around the world. To almost all 200,000 employees had access to, one way or the other, either an app or an in-person offering. And that's when I met you. When you came to Google, I remember our Google research team had invited you to come and give a demo of BrainTap, and they invited me to be part of that. And I clearly remember how overwhelmed I was initially with the experience, partly because I wasn't, even though I was working in a technology company, I wasn't prepared that technology can actually create those calm states in our mind, as what we were teaching our employees through 2.5 or sometimes 7 week long programs. And obviously there is value in those programs, but we also know that not all people in this world have that kind of time or availability or inclination to actually sit through some long meditation processes. But I was blown away because when you did the neural check, and then you gave me an intro to BrainTap visualization meditation practice. After that, I had to give a presentation to about 150 folks who were getting trained to become our next generation of facilitators at Google. And I felt I did so well. I was very confident. I was very present. I was very equanimous with the situation. So something happened, where the technology that you created helped me actually come to that state of mind. And I have it in my home. Thank you for sharing it with me and my son, myself, and my husband. And actually yesterday, an executive from the Bay Area was at my home, and we were talking about BrainTap at length, and he would love to connect with you as well. But people are really excited about how technology can actually create these shifts in our brain that are healthy for us and for our community, our family, and our co-workers. And so, yeah, and obviously then you and I met at the mastermind in Austin that you invited me to. And rest is history. Here is the book. We're holding it in our hand and bringing this good service to the world. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, we got it right here. So
Yeah.
it's available out there. It's available right now as a pre-order. If you're listening after the 21st of October, then you'll get it delivered to you. It's also available on audiobook and in Kindle. So that's great. Perfect. Yeah, looks good.
We're holding it, wearing a matching shirt too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a pretty incredible journey. And what we're finding when you think about what's happening at work, it used to be that we would work, we'd go take a coffee break, and maybe have a coffee, a donut or whatever, and then it would recharge us, we go back to work. But we're finding now that it's more of a brain space than it is a body space. I mean, you can get away with that if you're a road construction worker or something like that, and you're burning out the sugars in your muscles, and then you're just replacing them, but then eventually the body will give out. We're finding that this is a time for brain change instead of just physiological body change that's happening. And of course, you could always do Tai Chi or yoga or dance or something to get your physiology right as well. But we're talking about a whole comprehensive program. We're not just talking about BrainTap when we talk about Brain Fitness Blueprint, because it's not just download an app, press play. There's a whole series, and we have a 30-day plan that when people get that book, they can download and listen to. But one of the things that you brought to light that I think you kind of used in Search Inside Yourself, which I think that's an awesome name for a program. I'm sure Google, their search engine, so that's really a kind of play on words, but it's true. I mean, that's the ancient teachings, right? Search inside yourself. And, if you ask the right questions too, just like Google, if you ask the right questions, you get the right response back. So we got to ask the right questions. So I think that's really cool. But you helped me create something in the book that really, I think, made the book really well-rounded, called The Circle of Vitality. So tell me a little bit about The Circle of Vitality, so the listeners understand. Of course, in the book, we go to it in great detail, and we have a lot of, when they buy the book, they get some bonus materials as well to help them support in that journey. But tell us a little bit about The Circle of Vitality and how that came about and how you're using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I remember when we had that moment of the aha moment of wow, creating this circle of vitality and including that as a framework for our brain health. is so approachable, relatable, and integratable, in our lives. This was a different program than Search Inside Yourself. Actually, I created a program called Sustaining 10X with my colleague Brittany Kelso at Google. I give her equal amount of credit for this. Actually, more so, she is a psychology trained, expert from Yale University. And we were kind of creating like a well-being arc for our employees. Like, what are our credo in our team was to educate employees on what does well-being mean. Patrick, like, you went to college, I went to college, we had family systems and education systems. No one taught us like what well-being really means. We just had to discover it the hard way, either through meditation, through exercise, good eating. And it kind of became like this very foundational model that we created, and it's been shared before as a well-being circle also, and people put different components in it. But our circle of vitality, what it shows is a really approachable framework. Like, we know that there are certain components that are important for us to live a healthy and well life, and we realize that eventually what we get as healthcare is actually sick care. And I remember Cynthia actually pointing this out to us. And, it's like, it's not healthcare because only when you get sick, then you will get care. But we have the knowledge and a framework to know how to have actual healthcare. And that circle of vitality basically speaks to it. It tells us that there are a few components that are important in our well-being. And there are 8 that we have identified in the book. The first one is physical, then we have emotional, mental, social relationship, environmental, occupational, spiritual, and overall well-being. All of these are kind of, I look at them as a domino pieces, right? So if you kind of line them up, and if one domino piece falls, all the other areas of your life get affected. So we talk very in depth about physical well-being, which is essentially 3 parts to it. We have to eat well in order to feel well. We have to sleep well. I know you talk so much about it, and you have such great programs on BrainTap around sleep, healthy sleeping, healthy eating. I've actually practiced with those as well. And then the last one, but not the least, is movement. And that is something that is dramatically affected in our day and age today, where we are sitting on the chair all day long in front of our screens or scrolling our phones on social media, and we're not getting sufficient amount of movement in our life. And I'm not talking about going to the gym every day or every other day even. It's like, getting up and going for a little walk and making yourself a lunch or something like that. We're really undermining how movement is important in our life, and we realize as we start aging, particularly, like how important it is. So the circle of vitality, what it tells us is like you when readers will read the book, they'll see there at the heart of it is the brain, right? Like the brain is at the heart of it, and we know that because we talk about in the book, actually there are 3 brains: the heart brain, gut brain, and the heart brain, the brain in our head. And that's why, like, all of these different elements of well-being in circle of vitality actually lead us to have a better brain, be it our heart, be it our gut, be it our head brain. So that's like how we've presented the circle of vitality. We go into very deep details, sharing science, ancient methodologies like Ayurveda, yoga, Tai Chi, and modern science, like where we are seeing some real good experiments happening in the longevity science space on how to take good supplements in order to live better. It's not so much about the longer life. I talk about it as the health span, right? Like if I live till 60, I want to live healthy. If I live till 90, I want to live healthy. I don't want to be on a bed for 20 years of my life, creating, hassle for my family or anything like that, right? I just want to live my life well. So that's what Circle of Vitality basically covers, and I'm excited that we're both sharing it with the world.
Yeah, I think people don't realize when, like, the reason it's a wheel is if any of those systems are out of balance, we actually let them create the wheel, and if it's out of balance, you're going to see the wheel's going to it's going to be like a flat tire. But what happens physiologically is you have this unconscious stress. Maybe you're so dedicated to your job, you're just full out, you're doing 60 hours a week, you're really achieving, but then your home life is suffering. That's going to cause unconscious stress. And that unconscious stress is going to cause influence in other areas of your life. Maybe it shows up in your romantic life, or maybe in interfering with your sports life if you have a life like that outside of work. So all these things are important. So as you look at them and we solve them, and I want to just mention with movement, what they now know is when you move and breathe, not only do you exercise the physiology, but you actually stimulate something called BDNF. Think of BDNF, listeners, as miracle grow for the brain. So you're going to put it into the brain, and the brain just uses that BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. So that basically makes the environment rich. So when we think about the environment, and a lot of people think of the brain, like you said, just as this brain between our ears. And I always tell people that's like a Google tablet. because the Google tablet is really good. It's very economical, but you have to be hooked to the internet for it to work. So this brain has to be hooked to everything. If we have our spine severed, our gut brain still controls everything. In fact, they say we're 2/3 microbiome and we're 1/3 human. So, what's controlling that? That's the gut brain. But we know now, like in the last 25 years, because of heart math and other people like that, the research shows that this brain in our chest, this heart brain, 40,000 neutrino cells. And it's like the bass drum of the whole system. If it goes out of whack, like if you're stressed or worried or anxious, it causes all the other brain functions to suffer. So that's why they say follow your heart. So we've given some strategies. That what have you found when you started implementing this in the workforce? Because you don't hear about this in a lot of work. A lot of entrepreneurs are just going so hard. They're working 72 hours a week for themselves, and they're not getting any time to rest and relax. And then when they bring employees in, they expect them to work 70 hours too, but nobody's going to work as hard as the entrepreneur. Nobody's going to work as hard as the person who put it all together. But a lot of these workplaces, and a lot of people think Google was just slides and buffets and open bars, and that's what they hear about. But you guys worked really hard there. I mean, those people were working hard to get things done. So what happened when you went into that environment and said, look, we're going to slow down to speed up? People don't get that. Like we showed in the Julie Arndt study, where we took the programmers and we showed them just a 20-minute break, got them 26% more work done during the day. What evidence did you show them, or how did they discover that, hey, this search, to have that kind of adaptation in that environment? Because these are not like spiritual seekers. They're working for Google. They want the big paycheck. They want to be part of something that's changing the world in technology, but maybe not in the world of spirituality or in the world of personal development. But you've created this system that worked. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, reeling back to the days at Google, I think there was a lot of evidence available externally, Patrick. Just like you, many other neuroscience experts were proving study after study on the benefits of not just meditation or movement, but eating well and resting. So we had as I mentioned earlier, we had a committee of us working together. We had somebody from the food team on the committee. We had somebody from the gym and the whole exercise fitness area on the committee. I was from the learning and development side of things. So we really leaned on the external research speaking to us, and we believed it. We had a department within our people operations called people analytics. So those people analytics people were very much plugged in to this committee of well-being, where they will tell us we're seeing these scientific studies proving that meditation and mindfulness in workplace not just reduces stress, it also improves teamwork. It makes better leaders because it increases their emotional quotient, So we worked with some world-renowned scientists like Dr. Daniel Goleman, Dr. Richie Davidson, who actually put monks under the electrodes, just testing how their brains have shifted and how do they respond to stress compared to a normal average human being who has not been exposed to meditation and mindfulness. Similarly, obviously, from food perspectives, our food team kind of continued to bring in a lot of innovation. There was actually a cafe at Google called Kitchen Sink, and it was surprising. When I would go to that cafe, every bowl of food will have the calorie content outlined and the nutritional content outlined, that this is how much calcium, iron, and I'm like, how did they do this? But somehow the technology was evolved enough out externally that we could just leverage it. We did do some studies internally, one which was called segmenters versus integrators. That study showed us, as you were saying, like Google was like this utopia, right? Like people could come in, they can bathe at Google, they can do laundry at Google, they can eat at Google. We even had a metro nap, so you can technically sleep at Google. We had quiet rooms where people could go take a nap. Families were welcome to come and eat and enjoy. Things have changed now, but at that time we were a very flourishing company. And there was no stopping of it. Like there was, in traditional work settings, like you have a 9 to 5, you go home, you spend time with families. These days, anyway, we are all 24/7 on. But that study was kind of focused on understanding when people are segmenting their life, which means they're working from whatever time they define. They can start at 11 and end at 7, or they can go from 9 to 5. But then once they leave, they leave. They are not checking unless there is a code red, right? Like something breaks in Google product or something. That's when they're required to be on. For that, they were given a pager and special equipments to kind of contact the office. We found out that, and the integrators are like, okay, well, let me go to office at 10 o'clock and then have 2 hours lunch and then work for 1 hour. And then I'm going to go, do my laundry, go pick up my child, take them for a class. And I'm not saying any of these approaches are wrong. I've been an integrator because I raised 2 children while I was working at Google, and I had to go and take them to doctor appointment or things like that. But we found that if you over-index on integration of your job and your home life, then you're working till 3 a.m. You're compromising on your sleep. You are like cutting corners on your work productivity and output. Versus when you are segmenting, you are actually more productive. You have higher chances of getting promoted to the next level. People can rely on you. They know that you're available, and they also know that when you're disconnected, you're disconnected. In fact, the teams were happier with segmenter managers, because they felt like if my manager goes on vacation, he doesn't respond to email unless there's a code red for him. And so when I go on vacation, then I can also fully disconnect. I don't need to sit on the beach with a laptop. I can sit on the beach with a nice drink and put some sunscreen on and soak in the nice vibes, right? So that's like some of the studies we did. But I think the science outside, as you know, you've run so many experiments already, is so profound and so deep already that I don't think anyone is doubting like these are good practices for well-being. It's only about habit formation and changing our mindset towards it is the hard work we all need to put in.
Yeah, they're busting the myth on that multitasking thing. They found out when you multitask, you don't do either one as well as you would do if you could just do it. So it kind of makes sense on what you're talking about with the integrators and the segmenters. If you buckle down and do it. In fact, people have written books like The 4-Hour Work Week, which I went to the class with a guy. He didn't have a 4-hour work week. That was just a title to a book. Nobody, but the idea was to try to get it all done in the first 4 hours of your day, because that's when you have the most cortisol and dopamine and norepinephrine and all those things that drive you. And they found out that most of the time in the afternoon you're really not getting that much done. But we help to solve that with the Brain Fitness Blueprint. You can just do an afternoon session, take your time off, because we found that recovery, right? It's all about work hard. Just like they say, work hard, play hard. Those are the people that are successful. But a lot of people don't realize you need that recovery time. So we're showing how in the workplace, people work to the point where they hit the wall. They should have that place like Google provided, a room where they can go take a nap or go do a meditation, or, have a brain tapping room, or what we call a brain fitness room with a brain break or something. And then I think they should do that. And then they eat something that's going to charge their body, because their probably sugar levels are low because the brain uses so much energy. It's a 25% energy hog. 25% of everything you put in your body goes to your brain. So, if you're not feeding your brain, then the rest of the body is going to suffer. So where do you see this in the workplace? Because you were there, before Google and these tech companies started doing these kind of things, like integrating in like family life you're talking about. And, people look at that crazy guy with the Office Spaces. You know, he just had an Apple show come on, and I'm trying to get Cynthia to watch that, but because he's so crazy, I don't think she'll watch it. But you got to think outside the box. You know, you have this kind of family environment, but you're making money too. Your eyes on the bottom line, but you're motivating people. And of course, the pendulum always has to swing one way than the other. Like you said, Google's not quite there anymore, because once you have investors, you can't be so loose and fast and free with your money and things like that. They're going to be looking at the bottom line and saying, how much is this costing us, you know, and things like that. But when you look at the future of business, where do you see it going, and how do you see brain fitness fitting into that model?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I feel like corporations really need to pay attention to the well-being and health of their employees, especially in this day and age of AI. You know, we're working against the speed of AI right now. You know, we will never catch up to that, Patrick, because AI is like so much stronger. But there is some fundamental things that humans bring to the table that can be protected and nurtured, so that, you know, we as humanity can actually direct AI to go in the right place versus the wrong place.
Right.
We know that when our brains are not working efficiently, we don't tend to make very good decisions with our work, right? So I think now that, you know, we have this huge responsibility of ethically bringing AI into this world, we want everybody's brain to be working at the highest vitality level, if I may, right? And that means that we also don't need to work that hard, because AI is making our life way easier. You know, we can use a lot of tools to do the job in half the time or a fourth of the time. And I know it's also costing jobs to people. And I know there are so many organizations who are actually trying to upskill people so that, you know, we can all step up to the occasion and learn how to use AI towards our benefit. But I think, you know, I've been a practitioner of ancient wisdom and methodologies for over 20 years now. And I know you have also, you know, dabbled with that. It's a gift that comes to us, and at the same time, I'm very glad that technology is now enabling us to adapt and adopt these practices into our life with much more ease. You know, in the past, we had to find a teacher, a place to go to take a workshop, learn the techniques, question them, and, you know, try it out. But now we have scientific evidence-based products and services available all around us. Be it, you know, BrainTap, Headspace app, Calm app, Neurocalm. Like, there's just so many equipments, Muse, that are all out there enabling us to know we are stressed. And that's the work we do at Wisdom Ventures also. You know, our motto at Wisdom Ventures, our vision is to advance tech-enabled well-being in the world, because we realize that technology is a force. You know, it can do good or it can do bad. And if we just let it go as a wild horse, it can do good or bad. And we don't want to take that risk, right? We want to tame it to go towards the good of the world. So at Wisdom Ventures, like, we invest in companies that are creating technology, either apps, services, products that actually advance well-being for children, for new mothers, for people who are grieving, for people who have different kind of health needs. With Fund 2, we're also investing in companies that are doing drug discovery to eradicate, like, cancer from the world, and also reduce pain significantly. So I believe technology is a good force, but, you know, it needs good humans behind it to actually enable the good shift in the world. So that's where it's critical. So just bringing it back to corporations, I think corporations, startup, entrepreneurs, singlepreneur, partnerships, it all boils down to people for me. You know, as a person, are we, like, creating enough capacity for us to do our job well, be productive, make a good living out of it, and then also enable flourishing for the world through it? And when I talk about flourishing, I feel if I'm flourishing and I'm feeling the vitality inside me, then people around me are flourishing, right? Like, if I am sick, I can't take care of my family. I can't cook for them. I can't join them in the celebration. I'm going to be on the bed. And similarly, if I'm feeling vibrant, I can like lift everybody up with my energy. So I just invite corporations or individuals or managers and leaders to really reflect, like, your organization means nothing if your people are not well and they're not good. So pay attention to that, make it a priority for your organization and for yourself. So you're walking the talk as well, to do this. So a big invitation, having BrainTap in every corner of a building, like a quiet room in every office, is great idea. Or give people online applications to download and practice meditation, mindfulness. I use Noom, another app, which actually helps me eat well. It can now take a photo of my plate, and it can assess like how many calories I have. Do I have enough omega-3s on my plate? Like, it can tell me all of those kind of things because of AI now. So we know technology has uplifted so much to actually support the circle of vitality and eventually bringing our brain to a better state.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about in the book that our brains were not designed for this lifestyle we're living. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think that just like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're not in the same category anymore. I mean, very few people that are going to read our book or listen to this podcast are trying to survive. They're now trying to move into that thriving mode and things like that. So the thing is, how do we get our brain? And I think AI is good, but you have to use it for what it's good for. It's not good for directing your life and things like that. I think you have to have creativity. So I think when we talk about brain fitness, we're talking about the most creative person or the one that can solve problems on your own, and then test those out and do them. You're going to be the one that's going to be the most sought after person, because there's never going to be a shortage of problems in the world. And just like you said, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. And of course, I was just being interviewed on Fox Radio because people were using ChatGPT to be their psychologist. And actually, it told people to start cutting themselves because it's just going to get information. People don't understand AI is not a person. Even though it sounds like a person now, it responds like a person now. It's just information. It's like a Google search, but fed back to you in the form of an intelligence. But it's not really intelligent. It's just feeding you back information. So to the degree you can ask the right question, you get that information back. So I tell people it's kind of like your subconscious, but beyond the subconscious, there's a field of energy that we tap into, and that's why we talk about the spiritual nature of us. There's this higher nature that I think AI will never touch. I mean, each person out there, your brain is a 100 billion neurobit processor. We don't even know the capacity of it. We talk about in the book how in 2015, they discovered a whole new system of the body that people didn't even know about. Because in 2015, if you were taking physiology, the physiology book would say the lymphatic system stopped at the neck, every book in the world. But then during a sleep study, a doctor realized that during level 4 sleep, the glial lymphatic system opened up. And now that's how the brain detoxifies. They didn't know how the brain detoxified because there's this blood-brain barrier. So this is just one feature of the body. And now it's kind of like an X-Men. It unlocked. So what else do we have inside of us to unlock? If we let our creative mind and we let joy and, we follow our passions and we realize that we're not here to just survive or take from somebody else. There's enough in the world. And I love when somebody says, oh, we have too many people in the world. That's not true at all. If we took every person on earth and put them in Texas, but we gave them housing like in Japan, they'd all have plenty of room. Every person in the world could live in Texas. So we don't have too many people in the world. We're not using the capacity. So think of that as like the human brain. The human brain, somebody says we only use 10% of our brain. No, we use 100% of our brain's power, but we don't use 100% of its capacity because we don't know the capacity of the human brain. When people, I still remember a good friend of mine, Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He was my coach for a while, and he tells a story of a woman in Florida that actually saw a car drop onto her grandson. She picked up the car at 90-something years old. And then she became a recluse. She didn't come out of her home. So he got a chance to go down and interview her with a friend of mine named Bill Harris. And when they went in there, they said, what's going on? You lifted the car off your son. I mean, you should be celebrating. She goes, no, she says, I'm 90 years old and I lifted a car off my grandson. I wasted my life. What could I have done with my potential? So she was thinking it was a negative thing instead of a positive thing. But because you're listening right now, if we could activate that part of your brain, I think every person is imbued with some intelligence that nobody else has. There's a unique intelligence within every person, and there's no useless parts. Just like in DNA, right? When they said in 2003, when they mapped the human genome, and they said we have 1% human genome and 99% junk, and we know that's not true now, because in 2018 they also have equipment that mapped the human genome that tells us every 40 seconds, every DNA pair in our body rebraids based on our environment, our food, our thoughts. All these things are changing. We're changing. We're actually like the river, like the ancients say, you never step into the same river twice, right? Because even though the river looks the same, it's flowing the same, the reality is that's different water out there. The sediments have changed in the bottom. That river is a totally different river, but it looks the same. That's us. That's us as human beings in our brain. So one of the things that we teach in the book that I think is fascinating is giving people a way to look at their life differently, like the circle of vitality. And we have exercises in every chapter too that get you to, when what they say is the uninspected life isn't worth living, right? So when you think about your life, you did the best you could up to this moment in time. Congratulations, your best thinking brought you here. But I like to tell people, your best thinking isn't going to get you out of here, because that was yesterday's thinking. We need to upgrade our brain, just like when we have a computer and it says it's time for an update. It's time for an update right now. And that update, we believe, is the Brain Fitness Blueprint. So what would you say to somebody who says, Ruchika, why should I read that book? All the books that are out there, everybody has an idea. And of course, they don't have our ideas, but they have ideas. Everybody has an idea. Everybody has a solution. But we figured, hey, what can we do? You coming from the source of business, I'm coming from the source of clinical background and working with doctors. And we kind of put together this program so that individuals can become self-empowered and become their own brain fitness kind of coach. What would you tell somebody who says, why should I read this book?
Yeah, I'm resonating so much with what you've just shared also, Patrick. The thing that I was reading this morning was like, today is the first day of the rest of your life, right? Today is the first day. You're newborn today. And I said, if today you picked up the Brain Fitness Blueprint book, you would be surprised like how easy it is to actually understand what our brain is. I mean, it's intricate, as Patrick was sharing, right? Like we also don't know a lot about it. But I realized like I'm not a neuroscience expert. I am a student of neuroscience and ancient methods and, also the modern technology. I've always been a curious learner. And that's what brought me to actually write this book. So everyone can feel that they have access to some very simplified way of understanding how our brain works, what are the key aspects that we should all have in our vocabulary, brain waves, hormones in our brain, the neural connections, the neuroplasticity, the neural pruning. These are some of the basic things. If you don't take a science class in college or in high school, we never had an opportunity to learn. But they're so critical, especially in this day and age when we're all sitting on that chair. One part we are using the most in our body is our brain, right? Like our hands and fingers are moving on the keyboard, but most of the time this is always active. Like it's also active when we sleep. That's why we have sometimes the restless sleep. And your brain can still be active and you can have some memories and dreams, but you can go into the restful sleep, and we talk a lot about it in the book. I would say just the one draw is like take responsibility to learn what your brain is, what does it comprise of. When you're feeling the disorientation, distraction, brain fog every day, there are reasons for it. And if you don't understand the brain, then you would never know what are the reasons for it. So it's like, when you know what are the components of it, you can mix up the right ingredients and make the right cocktail or the right dish. But if you don't know, then you cannot do it. And then we also simply very easily identify how does it affect different parts of your life. Not just your physical body, but your social relationship. How many of us are feeling lonely? Even though we are in a crowd, have 5,000 friends, 20,000 followers on Facebook and social media, we're feeling lonely. And Dr. Vivek Murthy, who the former Surgeon General, has talked about it in deep studies. By the way, I think I can formally announce it today. He's formally joining our team at Wisdom Ventures as our senior venture partner. And so we're great to kind of have him in the mix of things as well, and very humbled. But the idea is that When you understand brain, you understand your body. You understand why your relationships are going well or not. You understand, like, when you're living in a particular environment, how is that impacting your day-to-day life, your mood, your optimism in life every day. You understand how important financial well-being is. A lot of times we make a lot of money, but we don't know how to use the money very well. So we have introduced some very basic concept of financial well-being in the book, and there's so much depth to it, and there are experts outside of it as well. And ultimately what the book does is it also helps you realize there is something like that's kind of above you, right? Like in the spiritual aspect of things, like we're not asking people to become religious if you're not religious, but understanding like how our brain is connected to something that's bigger than us. Patrick, my first realization of that element that's like bigger than me happened at a conference in Boston about 10 years ago. I remember I went to this conference by David Rock. You may know him. And we were sitting there. It was a very heavy neuroscience conference where people were talking about the studies and things like that. And I was volunteering in the space of like well-being at that time. And then I was sitting and I felt very overloaded in my head with information. And then I paused, and what realization came to me is like, what is that faculty that knows that my brain is overloaded? It was just a big aha moment for me to say, well, every realization is happening in my brain. I'm understanding these scientific studies, how they impact our workplace, how they impact our children. But now that I'm feeling overloaded with the sensory overload and the information overload, who made me realize that? That's like that. When that dimension opens up, you become curious and you become enamored about the enormity of this universe that we live in and the energy field that you talk about. So I invite people to come in on this journey with us on the Brain Fitness Blueprint, read it, and actually help us, expand this movement worldwide. Patrick already has a dream to make 1 billion brain better. I'm with him on that. And let's make this world better through actually working on ourselves first. And then everything else will fall in place.
Exactly. They say if you want to change the universe, don't try to change the universe. Change yourself, and the universe changes around you. So and I believe that's true. So if because the universe is within you, we perceive a universe. We don't. And if we believe the universe is happening through us instead of to us, it becomes a much more enjoyable journey. And that's what we're talking about with the Brain Fitness Blueprint, is to become a part of the solution. Don't focus on the problem, because the brain will put its energy where its attention is. So we need to put the attention on what do you really want out of your life. And it's not just about things. There's, emotional well-being. We talk about it, when we talk about what really means to be healthy, it's not just having good health in your body, but you have a timeline where you can see that you're doing things on a daily basis that are going to give you solutions to health and vitality. And one thing I will share, just because we're going to have you back, we're going to do more about Brain Fitness Blueprint. There's so much we could go over. I mean, we actually have another book that got edited out of the book, because it was too big. We had so much information, and I was telling Cynthia, I said, we got a whole other book here. We just got to figure out how to package it up, because we had already written it, but then they said, hey, it can't be that big. We put all the essential pieces into this book, but there's always going to be more, because of the ever-evolving, like you said, we don't know much about the brain still. We know the output of the brain, but we don't know really what's going on between the input and the output. There's a lot going on there that we don't know about. But one thing we do know is that language, your brain operates in a very base language, just like a computer has a code. But we can encode that. Every language on earth can actually teach the brain. That's why whether you're speaking Hindi, you're speaking English, you're speaking Japanese, Chinese, your brain is listening to you all the time. And one of the biggest reasons I believe that everyone listening should go get that Brain Fitness Blueprint is that you were trained by default, not by purpose. We're changing that now with books like what we're doing, and maybe getting more into the school systems and teaching people. But my mom and dad didn't know until they had their breakdown, and then my dad had his breakthrough, and he got us doing things. But what if we started teaching our kids from the very beginning that those thoughts you're thinking, like you're talking about the thought of overwhelm, there's also the thought that says, I'm not good enough. You're never going to amount to anything, or panic and anxiety. And they now know that that's ancestral. It's from, you're actually not just a person. When the Hopi Indians said 7 generations are guiding me, and now neuroscience is saying 7 generations of our family are influencing us, how do they know that? I mean, so what science is proving out is these ancient traditions weren't wrong. They just seemed spooky and weird at the time, but we're not just what we see on the surface. And we need to start encoding our life in our brain, because 95% of the time, our subconscious is in control, not our conscious mind. If it was just a conscious decision, we wouldn't have wrote the book, because everybody would just be doing the right things. But what happens is life happens. Stress happens, other people get involved, and children and all those things. So I think just organizing your life to know that, hey, think about it like you're a boat and you've got sails, and you got to know when to pull the sails in, and you need to know when to put the sails out to go fast and to do the things. But first of all, you got to learn how to sail. All that other stuff doesn't matter. So let's get the base programming done, and then you can go ahead and write the most complex program you want, because you're now in control. And nice thing about the brain is, when you feel certainty, you can achieve anything. If you feel uncertainty, you'll achieve nothing, because a confused mind doesn't produce. We need to have clarity, and it could be just thinking, what do I do in my relationship at home? What do I do? Not any further than today. How do I handle that relationship? How do I bring more love, more compassion, more acceptance into that relationship? Whatever it is, there's a plan for it. And I think when you download the book, for those out there that haven't done it yet, when you download the book, there's a 30-day plan. And what I always tell people is, the best test is with you. We can talk till we're blue in the face. We know that it works, but it's got to work for you. But you got to give it a full commitment. Download the 30-day plan, commit to 30 days. In 30 days, you can always go back to what doesn't work. So just commit to it for 30 days. And change is always better than no change. But we need to have change in a positive direction. That's why we always say positive change, not just change to have change. But think about, if it doesn't work, fail fast, go back, figure out something different. Figure out whatever's working in your life. Don't change those things. But the things that you feel, agitation, irritation, uneasiness, those are the things that, when you start searching within yourself, just like your program, you need to search inside yourself, find out what's going on, because you're the producer here. You're the lead director. You're the actor and actress in your life. So what role are you choosing to play? We don't want you to play victim anymore. You have a powerful brain, and that is accessed by your powerful mind. And then there's layers and layers of you. There's not just the you that's listening to our voice right now. There's the you at work. There's the you at play. There's the you in relationships. That's why we talk about the circle of vitality. And all those personalities, if you will, it's not that you're fragmented in that way, but we have different states of being. And they have to be in harmony. When they're in harmony, then we call that happiness, because things happen in a sequence of events that make us feel good. When they don't work in happenings in the right place, then we feel unhappy, because it's all about language. So what I'm going to recommend everyone, and Ruchika, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. We're going to have you back. Obviously, we're going to talk about, maybe we'll break down each chapter, go into some details about them, give the listeners some insights into why we did those things and why it's about. But did I forget to ask you anything before we end the podcast today? Anything you want to share with the listeners about Brain Fitness Blueprint, or just reinforce?
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. It's just been such a engrossing conversation. I really love what you were sharing just now as well. Always a great reminder, even for us who may be considered as experts on this. We are, I think I have to remind myself that I'm a student of it every day. I'm reading the book again. I think one thing I would just mention is, the deep inspiration for this book for me came obviously when I met Patrick, but I also lost my mother to ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, where I saw her brain was still alive, but her body stopped responding, one system at a time, where, because the motor neurons that connect and actually move all of the different systems in our body started dying in her body. So, from her movement to her digestion. And that's when I realized, like, the stress that we feel in our everyday life, if it's not managed well. Like, she was never good at eating her breakfast on time. She was always like stressed and worried about many things in life, even though we reminded her that, all is well, and like things are kind of settled. Your kids are doing well. Your family is good. Something in her was like always worrying her. And I felt like that little pieces of stress, the whole puzzle came about in this real sad outcome, which left her family also very disoriented after her departure. So, I would love for everyone, all of you listeners who are listening to it today, not just think about like how your brain is functioning today, but how do you want it to function in 10 years or 20 years from now? Because aging is a natural process. It does affect our physiology and our brain and neurology as well. But if we take the measures today, we can have such a better life, down the line compared to not. I wish I had this information before so I could have guided my mom, but I feel like I can still pass on the message of my own personal experiences to the world so that we can take this with reverence and also seriousness. Like, if we don't move, if we don't eat well, if we don't sleep well and not have social relationship, all of that is going to come back and bite us in wrong ways. So, protecting ourselves is really key. So, read this book and tell us like what you think. We are very excited to bring it to all of you.
That's great. Well, thank you, Ruchika, and we're gonna have you back. Of course, we're gonna do more together. And if for those out there that are listening that have podcasts or anything like that, Ruchika's available to be on podcast. I'm available to be on podcast. We can delve deep into the book, teach your audience a little bit about it. One of the things I want to leave the audience with is we talk about it in the book a lot. Is that you get one opportunity to improve your brain. When it's too late, it's too late. So it's never too early to start working on your brain, right? You don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. And I'd like to tell people that it's all about frequency. It's what you frequently see. So think about frequency that way. We need to change your frequency. We're talking about brain frequencies. We need to get that brain frequency so it's in harmony. We call it, you're going to learn in the book, we call it a symphony of brain waves. It's not just one brain wave. All brain waves are good, but they have to be used in the right way. So think of it like a gear shifter on a car. We're going to teach you what type of brain speed do you need for what activity, because if you're out of balance in that way too, you get stress and anxiety. So, there's a lot here to learn, but learning starts one day at a time. And I always tell people anything worth doing well is worth doing terrible at first. So don't worry, if you don't have to be a neuroscientist. There was no neuroscience when I went to school. There was biofeedback. That's what we did. Somebody said, did you take neurofeedback in college? I go, there was no neurofeedback. There wasn't even EEGs that people could use. They were in hospitals, of course, but they weren't in the public domain until the Mind Mirror came out in 1987, and we got one at the lab at Light and Sound Research. We thought we were and it was just an LED pad that showed what was going on in the brain. It was totally crude compared to what we have today. So science is changing every day, and if you get the book, tune into what we're doing in the future. We're going to keep you abreast of what we're learning. Ruchika's out there with her Wisdom Ventures speaking to people who are on the cutting edge of all this new technology and investing when she sees fit with her group. And, I'm out there speaking and learning about things, so we're going to keep you informed as much as we can about what's happening. But the first step is to go get that book, Brain Fitness Blueprint. Start reading it, learning it. If you get it before the launch date, then you get $1,000 worth of bonuses. So just go to that website, which we'll have in the show notes below too. We'll also have Ruchika's social media down there so you can follow her and what she's doing. So Ruchika, thanks again for being on the podcast. It was great to connect with you again today and talk about the book and what we're going to do in the future. Those of you listening, I'm on a mission to better a billion brains. So if you've listened this far, congratulations. It's your brain I'm talking to. And it's your job now to inform your family, your friends, your coworkers, because this message only gets out to you if you don't share it with other people. So please like and share the video, share it with your family and friends. Let's get the word out there that you can change your brain at any age. There's no age limit. Your brain is always evolving and improving. It's either doing what Ruchika said earlier, it's either neuropruning, which means it's disconnecting, or it's neurogenesis, you're growing and learning. And that's neuroplasticity. So we want to get you in that neuroplastic state where you're waking up every morning like today's Christmas, and you're wondering what the package is you're going to open up because we call it the present. So congratulations for being here. Please tune in to our next Brain Fitness podcast, where we'll bring you another guest that's going to help you to learn about your brain, your body, and your fitness for your life and for the life of your loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our mission to better a billion brains. Follow at Dr. Patrick Porter on social media for updates, and remember to practice brain fitness every day.